everyone, and welcome to the first presentation of the Hazardous Material Transport Outreach Network's 2026 Summer Webinar Series. My name is Aude Locher, and I am the Water Resources Outreach Specialist with Lake Champlain Sea Grant, which is a member organization of the network. Because it's a mouthful, we call ourselves HazMaTON for Hazardous Material Transport Outreach Network. My co-host for today is Emily Duffy from the U.S. Coast Guard Great Lakes Oil Spill Center of Expertise, which is also a member organization of HazMaTON. To start with, I wanted to tell you a little bit about our network. HazMaTON is a binational collaborative of specialists from the Great Lakes, Lake Champlain, Hudson River, and St. Lawrence River regions, focused on reducing risks associated with multiple modes of oil and other hazardous materials transportation through education, outreach, and relationship building. To that end, we are pleased to bring you our 2026 Summer Webinar Series. This year, we are celebrating the 10th anniversary of this Summer Webinar Series, which we are very excited about. As in previous years, we have a fantastic lineup of speakers. We'll host webinars once a month from May to September that cover different aspects of hazardous material transportation, as you can see on the slide here. Today's webinar will discuss how the U.S. Coast Guard Great Lakes Oil Spill Center of Expertise helps prepare the next generation of spill responders. Before we delve into today's topic, I have a few logistics to share with you. This webinar is being recorded, and the recording with captions will be publicly available on Minnesota Sea Grant's YouTube channel and on HazMaTON's website. If you go on our website that Emily will put in the chat, you will find previous webinars that you can watch at your convenience. You are in listen and view only mode. We invite you to submit questions, comments, and/or technical challenges at any time via the Q&A box in your toolbar, which is at the bottom of your screen. You can upvote questions that are particularly relevant to you. We will be collecting all your questions from the Q&A and those will be answered during the Q&A session that will take place right at the end of the presentation, and that will be led by my co-host, Emily. At the bottom of your screen, you will also find a button for live transcriptions or closed captions, so feel free to use that if that's helpful. And with this, I wanted to introduce our speaker today. We are very excited to have her, Dr. Allison Snider. Dr. Snider is a civilian research scientist with the U.S. Coast Guard Great Lakes Oil Spill Center of Expertise, based in Sault Ste. Marie in Michigan. Ali earned a Ph.D. in wildlife biology from Louisiana State University in 2021, where she studied the chronic impacts of the Deepwater Horizon spill on coastal food webs. She then served as a science policy fellow with the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. And as a fellow, Ali worked with the Gulf Coast Ecosystem Restoration Council in New Orleans, which is a federal agency using Deepwater Horizon settlement funds to support coastal restoration initiatives throughout the region. Ali joined the Great Lakes Center of Expertise in 2023, where she serves as a project manager, scientific subject matter expert, and coordinator for the unit's internship program with the U.S. Coast Guard Academy. we are very thrilled to have her today. And as I am going to stop sharing my screen, I'm going to ask Dr. Snider if she can share her screen. And while she's doing that, I have a poll that I wanted to share with everyone. So very, very quick, I'm going to start it right now. Uh, we wanted to have a sense of who our audience is and how we can best serve you. This is a quick poll. I'm going to give everyone 1 minute to respond. About 50% of participants have responded, so I'm just going to wait a few more seconds. 82%. I'm going to wait 15 more seconds and then I'm going to close the polls. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming, for answering the poll. So I'm going to quickly share the results. It's 58% of respondents have attended the webinars before, so that's great to know. Most of you heard from the HazMaTON email announcements. Okay, and then ranking your agreement with the statement, I would be comfortable describing the workforce development programs at the Great Lakes Oilspill Center of Expertise to a friend or coworker. We have a mix between agree and decided disagree. So we'll work on that today. Thank you so much, everyone, for answering this poll. I'm going to stop sharing. And now, Emily, you have the floor. Ali, sorry. I don't know why I called you Emily. I'm sorry.
No problem at all. All right, so thank you so much, and thank you all for joining us today. I'm thrilled to be able to share some of the work we're doing here at the U.S. Coast Guard Great Lakes Oil Spill Center of Expertise. We often refer to ourselves as GLCOE, just because that is a mouthful. So today we're going to be talking about how our unit shapes the next generation of Great Lakes spill responders. Responding to spills in the Great Lakes, of course, brings unique challenges. So unlike the rest of the Coast Guard's area of responsibility, the Great Lakes region is predominantly or entirely freshwater. And unlike some of the most active spill environments that Coast Guard is active in, for example, the Gulf South, we have cold weather and ice that pose additional complications when working on spill response. So this is part of the reason that the Great Lakes COE was founded. The GLCOE was established in 2018 under the Frank Labanito Coast Guard Authorization Act, and we are a non-operational unit directed to primarily support freshwater oil spill research and development in the Great Lakes. So what that means is that our unit is not actively going out and responding to spills, and we're not doing inspections. Instead, we are focused on the science, technology, and research side of things. So we work very closely with the U.S. Coast Guard Great Lakes District, formerly called District 9 or 9th District, who does oversee daily operations in the region. So if there is a spill or an emergency, Great Lakes District is going to be the one to do search and rescue, coordinate that spill response. And our job is to support them through this freshwater oil spill research and development, thereby ensuring they have the most up-to-date tools and techniques available to them in the event of a spill. So as research on freshwater oil spills expands, the tools and techniques available are rapidly evolving, as well as our understanding of how oil impacts the freshwater environment. And as a research team that's charged with staying abreast of and facilitating this work, it's also our responsibility to make sure that responders are kept up to date and that the science is making its way into the hands of the folks in the field who need it and can use it. So many of you on the call, if you're familiar with the GLCOE, probably know us from our broad agency announcement or our BAA. That is our competitive funding opportunity to support research efforts. But our mandate also has two pieces on education and training that are oftentimes a little less known. So these mandate components allow us to ensure that this cutting edge science is making its way into the hands of the responders that need it the most. So these two pieces of our mandate include educating and training federal, state, and local first responders on three components. The first is the incident command system structure. The second is Great Lakes oil spill response techniques and strategies. And the third is public affairs. The second component of that education portion of our mandate is to work with academic and private sector to develop and standardize oil spill response and training techniques. Currently, we have three main ways of meeting these portions of our mandate. So to ensure that we're meeting that education component, we have a yearly internship program with the U.S. Coast Guard Academy. We are designing and supporting workshops, and we're participating in various community outreach events. And we're going to go through each of those in detail moving through the rest of this presentation. The first way that we try to meet the education component of our mandate is through the yearly internship program we conduct in coordination with the Coast Guard Academy. So, of course, the target audience for this internship are U.S. Coast Guard Academy cadets, also known as students. So the Coast Guard Academy calls them cadets, and they join us during their first class summer. So that just means they are students between their junior and senior year. You'll probably hear me refer to them as cadets, students, and interns interchangeably. The U.S. Coast Guard Academy is a service academy located in New London, Connecticut, but the students come from around the U.S. and around the world. And then upon graduation, they will move into the U.S. Coast Guard's fleet as commissioned officers. So why work with cadets? The cadets are college students, of course, when we work with them, but shortly they're about to become leaders in the U.S. Coast Guard. And depending on where their career path takes them, they might be leading responses in the future. They may be moving into the Great Lakes and participating in oil spill response activities. So we have this really cool opportunity to meet them where they are and help them understand the unique aspects of our region. And indeed, many of them have no experience with the Great Lakes. So really, in addition to this opportunity, we have what feels like an obligation or a responsibility to engage them and educate them on what it means to be a part of the Great Lakes community, the Great Lakes District, and the oil spill response community. So for the internship program, cadets, like I said, have to be between their junior and senior year. They have to be in good standing and have very specific grade requirements. They apply for the internship program, and then they are able to match or rank all of the possible internship locations that they can go to for their summer. So the interns that are selected for the Great Lakes Oil Spill Center of Expertise will join us here at our office in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, where we are located at Lake Superior State University. We are in their Center for Freshwater Research and Education. And then while they're here, they have a really unique opportunity to complete an oil spill research project in conjunction with ongoing research efforts. So they get to partner with the folks here at LSSU and kind of carve out a section of the ongoing oil spill research that ideally helps them, helps the researchers, and contributes to the overall science body. They also have the opportunity to engage in other professional development activities while they're with us. So they're able to volunteer at the Engineers Day booth. They can work with the local sector up here, which is Sector Northern Great Lakes. They get to visit, learn about grad school experiences. So we've really tried to get them a wide variety of professional development activities. And to make sure the interns are getting the most out of this internship with us, we've embraced a place-based learning approach. Now, a place-based approach to learning is instructional approach that focuses on developing students' sense of place and learning through exploring their environment. We really, really prioritize getting the cadets out into the field, collecting samples, exploring the area, and doing hands-on research. We've seen that it has multiple benefits for our interns, and we really want to give them the opportunity to get the most out of their time with us. So having them participate in this active oil spill research allows them to, one, engage in the science that is shaping Great Lakes spill response efforts. Two, it allows them to see what exactly is going into the tools and techniques that they encounter. It gives them the opportunity to develop an appreciation for how unique the environment is up here and how challenging it can be, and how those challenges are informing the approaches used in the region, and why responders are doing the things that they do. This also allows them to engage with the research community that's developing the tools. So they get to meet with them, learn from them, and see their way of thinking. And it gives them the chance to interact with the Coast Guard community in the region, similarly learning from them and learning what it's like to serve in the Great Lakes. So hopefully they get a better idea if this is somewhere that they would like to come back to later in their career. And finally, it lets them be a part of the local community. So the community in Sault Ste. Marie, they get to go to the farmers market, they get to meet the other students and the teachers that they work with day to day, and gives them the chance to really start to integrate into the community that they could serve one day. This internship also allows them to develop a better understanding and sense of place. So a few of the interns we found work on capstone projects. So all of the interns at the Academy will develop a capstone research project that they start their junior year and finish their senior year. We found, however, that some of them were working on projects in the Mackinac Straits, for example, but had never visited the region before. So we were able to encourage them, while you're here with us, go to the Straits of Mackinac, see what that traffic looks like, see how people are interacting with the shorelines, and really consider things that you would not necessarily pick up on a computer screen when you're doing just basic modeling and things like that. So we to date have had 5 interns, and we'll have 2 more joining us this summer. The first intern that we had was in 2023 when we had just 1 student join us, and she conducted work on preliminary analyses of sediment microbial communities in response to oil. So Riley collected sediment samples from around the region, and then she prepared those samples for oil exposure. So she had controls, oil exposed samples, and samples that she stopped at day 0 to measure that initial community composition. So after exposing those samples to oil, they were incubated at 15 days, and you can see them there in a little cage outside of the LSSU Seafree building. So they wanted to try incubation at ambient environmental temperatures. Once that incubation period was done, she extracted the DNA, prepared it for sequencing, and loaded it into this MinION sequencer, which is a very tiny DNA sequencing platform. It's actually that little small silver thing that you can see below her green glove in the final photo. And then she and her mentor here at Lake Superior State University sequenced the data and began to interpret the results. So her preliminary results really highlighted differences in communities when exposed to oil, these microbial sediment communities, with some taxa being more capable of withstanding that exposure than others. And essentially what I want you to notice with the bar graph here, what you see on the far left And in the middle, there's quite a variety of colors or taxa in those bars. But when you get to the far right, that represents the day 15 oiled sample. And the number of taxa present in those samples was much reduced compared to the day 0 samples on the far left and the day 15 control in the middle. So this really laid the groundwork for Lake Superior State University to kind of work out the best practices for using the sequencing technology. So we were able to use this as our first run at how to sequence different types of microbial communities with that min ion. And it prepared the groundwork for 2024's summer internship project. So in summer 2024, we had 2 interns join us for the first time, and they continued work on analyzing sediment microbial communities in response to oil, but they added a chemical analysis, and instead of testing out the sediment microbial communities from different parts of the Eastern Upper Peninsula, they focused on one location of sediment that was dredged from the St. Mary's River by the U.S. Army Corps. Now, this was done in preparation for a much larger scale mesocosm experiment that's being conducted by the ICOR OWN research group, which is a part of the Canadian Multi-Partner Research Initiative. And that ICOR OWN stands for International Consortium of Oil Research, Our Waters of the North. And that's a partnership that's led by Lake Superior State University and the Canadian Algoma University. So they have these large white tanks that you see in this bottom left photo that they fill with sediment, which is the sediment from the Army Corps. And then they fill it with different types of emergent and submerged aquatic vegetation and different invertebrates. And then they expose that to different oil types. So they had wafts, they had oil that they put on the top. But before this large scale experiment kicked off, they wanted to have a base understanding of what those microbial communities looked like and how you might expect them to respond to this oil contamination. So that's where our interns came in. The 2 interns took sediment samples from the large sediment deposit from the Army Corps. They added diesel and then incubated them for several days, this time in a lab incubation setting. And you can see all of their different jars that are in that incubator. Similar to the previous year's intern, they then prepared these for sequencing and sequenced the microbial communities with Dr. Britt Ranson-Olson, who is the microbial expert here at Lake State University. So they found that some of the microbial taxa were able to survive and continue growing in the sediment, while others struggled to stay alive after oil exposure. Now, in 2024, there was also an opportunity for the cadets to visit the site of a small response. So the local U.S. Coast Guard sector, Sector Northern Great Lakes, was managing this ongoing sheen in a local marina. And our cadets had the opportunity to go with our Chief Warrant Officer and observe the way that the Coast Guard was approaching and managing this scene. And they were able to talk through some of the unique considerations that the sector was working through at the time. So it was a really cool opportunity for them, in addition to their research, to get a good view of how we are responding to spills in the region. Now, our interns in 2025 participated in a different project that was happening at Lake Superior State University. This was part of an ongoing GLCOE funded project at Lake State. So they participated in the effects of CDOM, or color dissolved organic matter, tannins, on the performance of in situ oil sensors. So the broader project is assessing whether or not commercial off-the-shelf in situ sensors are good at detecting oil under a wide variety of conditions in the Great Lakes. So the interns were able to tackle this one small part that looked at tannins and CDOM. So to do this, they selected 5 locations around the region to essentially test the water and look at different levels of CDOM. They then chose the highest concentration of CDOM for their experiment so they could make serial dilutions, essentially. And this involved them taking massive jugs and pumping water in and driving it back to campus, where they were then able to fill giant bins or trash cans with water and prepare these cereal dilutions. So they set up their dilutions, they set up their buckets, and they were then able to add oil and put the sensors to the test. And while they were doing this, they also collected samples of the water to test for different protein concentrations. Ultimately, they did find that differences in CDOM do indeed influence how well the sensors are able to detect oil in water, and that as CDOM concentration increased, so did the amounts of protein in the water. And this all fit nicely within the general expectations based on the body of literature that they reviewed for their project. So they were pretty happy to see that it did all kind of come together at the end of their 5 weeks. And then this work was incorporated into the ongoing and larger project that LSSU was conducting and just wrapped up recently. So they hope to have this prepped for publication soon, and you can keep tabs on our website. Emily will have the link later for us to follow up on what the broader project found to include the interns' findings. And similarly to the summer of 2024, there was an ongoing response that happened while the cadets were here with us in 2025. So there was a ship that ran aground in the St. Mary's, and our cadets were able to go with our chief warrant officer, board that freighter, and observe how a response is conducted. There was no pollution with this event, but they were able to see the way that it's prepared for the prevention and potential release of fuel oil, for example, from this vessel. So far, the outcomes of the internship projects have informed ongoing research, as I've said, and had very positive impacts on the cadets. So we have heard wonderful things from them and wonderful things from the internship coordinator at the Coast Guard Academy. Of the 5 interns that we've had so far, and actually of the 7 interns that we will have had total by the end of the summer, only 2 have had previous experience with Michigan. We did have a third that had been to Chicago for a long weekend one time, but largely speaking, they don't have a lot of experience with the Great Lakes. However, I'm so excited to say 2 of the interns have returned to the Great Lakes region for their first duty stations after graduation. So they're leaving this internship program with a really positive experience and something that makes them want to come back and continue serving in the Great Lakes. And that is an incredible full circle moment for us, and also really encouraging to know that these interns have gained this experience with us, and then they're taking that forward in their career. And then also based on the work that they do while they're with us, the U.S. Coast Guard Academy is actually working on turning this internship into a credit option for the students. So they develop a report, they do independent research with us, and that is something that they are using us as a pilot case, essentially, to give the students credit for the work that they do. And as I said, we will have 2 more interns coming this summer. They will arrive mid-June, and you can continue to check our website. We will be posting updates about the work that they do. The next initiative that we use to support that education component of our mandate is organizing and supporting workshops. So next, we'll go through 2 examples of workshops. The first is the Unmanned Aircraft Systems, or UAS, workshop. And this one is, I believe, in its 3rd year, its 3rd iteration, and it targets U.S. Coast Guard personnel or existing responders. Now, why are we targeting existing Coast Guard responders? Well, UAS are quickly changing and improving, and we want to push these advances and methods to the field as quickly as possible with the appropriate supporting materials, such as guidance and a framework for using these tools. Second, in terms of this supporting framework, it's important that we look at the big picture. So we can't just train one single pilot. You also need people behind the scenes who are making sure data is being stored properly, transferred, conveyed, and displayed in ways that are useful during a response. And finally, this workshop is addressing a gap for mission-specific training. So the Coast Guard has 11 different missions, and US Coast Guard drone pilots are often flying various types of missions. So they could be flying a search and rescue, they could be flying law enforcement missions, but they don't often or ever get oil-specific training. So this is addressing that gap. So the UAS workshop takes a single cohort of participants and puts them through a multi-phase training. They begin in a classroom where they're able to look at the drones, learn about the guidance materials that we have, and kind of discuss what the processes are going to look like in terms of data transfer. And then after that, they progress into the fields. So we have 2 field experiences that they participate in. The first is cold weather, which you see in the bottom photo here. This was last year's cohort in St. Ignace, Michigan, where the groups are able to get experience flying drones in the cold and all of the challenges that come along with that. So batteries and electronics don't often like very cold conditions. And then there's additional challenges flying in snow and overcast conditions. The next phase of outdoor course or workshop experience comes in Santa Barbara. So in this middle photo here, you can see that they are on US Coast Guard cutter Blackfin. And the reason that they are going to Santa Barbara, obviously not the Great Lakes, not fresh water, but they have natural oil seeps. So the pilots are able to get practice seeing oil from a vessel and from their UAS. They're also able to practice advanced launching and recovery while underway. So that is what's happening in this top photo, where from the vessel, they are launching that drone and recovering it by hand, which is quite challenging. So through these various workshop phases, ultimately the goal is to put pilots in challenging real-world scenarios that give them experience overcoming these various environmental conditions, practicing data management, and navigating interagency connections with NOAA, private sector organizations, and other shareholders. Beyond just getting them practice and exposure, the UAS workshop have had several outcomes. The first is supporting the integration of drones into responses more intentionally. So instead of just, hey, we think there's a spill, can you throw a UAS up and take a look? We've been able to streamline that process and develop guidance and best practices for them. And to that end, we've created guides or job aids and different apps that outline these best practices so responders in the field are able to quickly reference those. And then we've also worked to update and maintain these materials with lessons learned. So after a workshop, if the pilots are giving us feedback on, hey, this isn't working, we can revise that guidance and materials so that it's continually being improved. To date, we've trained over 50 US Coast Guard personnel on oil-specific and oil and ice response techniques through this workshop. Now, the second workshop that we're currently supporting, and you may have seen in the HazMaTON email listserv, is the Great Lakes Community Oil Spill Workshop. Due to the lapse in federal funds, this workshop is currently still in development with TNT Marine. And instead of being ready for a full-scale available to community workshop this year, it's going to be undergoing a small pilot run with a group of select participants this fall. So while it's not yet available to the public, eventually that's the goal. This is, of course, an external focused workshop, taking a whole community approach, targeting both existing responders, but also shareholders who want to learn how they can be involved in the event of a spill in their community. Examples of those shareholders include tribal, federal, state, and local government employees, community decision makers, NGOs, private organizations, or other regional officials with a responsibility during a spill. So the goal with this workshop is to increase preparedness and resiliency at the community level. Now, this workshop is going to be building upon existing material, existing plans, such as area contingency plans, regional response strategies and tactics, discuss and incorporate community priorities, and walk through ICS or incident command systems and public affairs. So building proficiency within the community around these existing tools and techniques. So we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, we're just trying to make sure that the wheel is accessible to everybody and that everybody's on the same page. It's designed to be interactive and consider a variety of perspectives. The intended outcomes for this are to provide that foundational knowledge and spill response and to support connection and collaboration within groups of people who might be working together during a spill. So more to come on this workshop as it continues to be developed. We will certainly share that with the HazMaTON group as this progresses, but also it will be posted on our website. The third and final, most fluid initiative that we use to address our mandate's education component is engaging in community outreach. So engaging with the community, first and foremost, lets us meet the public. We're a very small unit, so we don't get a lot of opportunities to branch out. There's only 6 of us, and this gives us a chance to talk to the public about what our work is and why we're here. It allows us to raise awareness about how to report a spill. So not everybody will become a spill responder, but everybody can help in the event of a pollution event. It's also given us the opportunity to discuss career opportunities. So we work with a lot of students at different ages and who have different interests. So we've been able to share things like what careers look like for folks who join the US Coast Guard, people who are interested in science and research, career paths in community response, and all sorts of other things that relate to both HazMaTON and the GLCOE. So there's so many ways that people can get involved, and really any opportunity we have to share our experience is something that we try to engage with. We've participated in Sulak's Engineers Day, which is actually the photo that you see on the right-hand side. So those were our 2 interns that were with us in 2024, I believe, and they created an oil spill response game. So of course, the kids that were coming through the Seafree building are not going to be spill responders anytime soon, but they were able to share how responders actively pick up oil. Do they try to use the little squares of paper towel, or should you use a spoon to scoop it up? So a lot of engagement was happening with kids, but then also the parents who were asking more practical questions like, yeah, what should I do if I spill gasoline in the marina? We visit classrooms, high school, as well as college, and provide guest lectures, answer questions. We meet with science teachers throughout the Eastern Upper Peninsula and in our Ann Arbor office as well. And we've occasionally also had students shadow us so they can learn about what a day is like for a research scientist or for a US Coast Guard active duty member. So really very eager to engage in a wide variety of community outreach and very excited to do so whenever we have the opportunity. And then, of course, if you are interested in joining our mailing list, you can scan the QR code here. That is also the SMB Great Lakes COE at uscg.mil. You can email us if you have any questions, or if you would like to join the email list, you can also shoot us an email over there. Our website, which Emily can drop in the chat, is listed there. And we generally try to update that as often as possible, maybe once a month or so. So that will have any ongoing federal projects that we're supporting, any information on our broad agency announcement, any general updates coming from the unit can be found there. And with that, I am happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Allison. That was wonderful. It makes me want to be an undergrad again and, you know, try my luck with the internship program. So while people And Emily is gonna run this, but while people are thinking about their questions, I do wanted to ask you a question, Alison.
Sure.
Uh, so what's the process to select candidates for the internship program? Like how many applications do you get, and what are the criteria that you choose to select participants?
So we generally will only select students that have a marine environmental science major, just because that's what aligns most closely with what we can support. So there are, for example, naval architecture students at the academy. That's not something that we could provide them a meaningful experience with. We don't have any naval architecture capacity at the unit. So we try to select students that align pretty well with our mandate and that we are able to find a relevant research project for them. A lot of the process of narrowing students down happens at the academy. So there are, it sounds like a pretty competitive process, but they rank who they're interested in working with, and then the academy will select them for us. But we are able to do a pre-selection process that says, please send us marine environmental science students.
Do you see any question, Emily?
All right, we do have a question from Geneva Langeland. What kinds of activities do you bring to classrooms for K through 12 type outreach?
So we have, I wish he was here. Our chief warrant officer, Mr. Joe Torcivia, has this massive box of miniature response equipment or sections of response equipment. So they're able to get a hands-on feeling of boom, of pom-poms. There's a miniature skimmer that we set up that's very, very popular with students, where you can actually use it to skim oil off of water, and just vegetable oil, of course, nothing crazy, but it gives them the kind of idea of, oh, yeah, I guess you can just absorb oil if it's sorbent, or, use a plastic rotating drum to collect the oil. So it really gives them a cool understanding of what spill response looks like. It's a huge hit.
All right, what other questions do we have?
While people are thinking, I'm happy to ask a second question, which I was curious about your community oil spill workshop. How often do you offer them? I'm just thinking, like, for example, municipal leaders, that's probably an audience that you're targeting. They rotate, there is a high turnover. So how often do you offer these workshops so that to keep everyone in the loop as much as possible?
Yeah, so this year, because it's a pilot run and we're working on kind of nailing down all of the material that we want to present, it'll just be once a year. But moving forward, trying to do twice a year. And I believe the idea with that is trying to change the location of it as well, so that we're able to get into different parts of the region and meet folks that maybe aren't able to easily travel, or, their jobs are keeping them close to home. They're very busy. So giving them something that's a little bit easier to access.